Okay, let's just dive straight into this. We have literally all been there. You're scrolling through your feed, minding your own business, and boom, you see an ad for a mobile game. There's this little cartoon character trapped in a room, lava is pouring in, and all the player has to do is pull the correct pin to save them. But instead, the player pulls the absolute worst pin, the character is totally doomed, and you are just left staring at your screen going, no way, it is so easy. So what do? You download the game, ready to prove you can beat it. But when you actually open the app, that puzzle is nowhere to be found. Instead, you're looking at a standard match 3 game, kind of like Candy Crush. Well, congratulations, you've just experienced the $81 billion hallucination. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the fascinating and honestly, kind of dark truth behind mobile gaming ads.
So it brings up the question literally everyone asks. Why on earth are mobile game ads so blatantly fake? Like, you probably think the developers are just terrible at marketing, right? Or maybe they outsource their ads to a firm that didn't even bother looking at the game. But actually, that is absolutely not the case. The fact that the game you see advertised doesn't exist, that isn't some clumsy accident. It is entirely 100% by design.
I actually love how our source material frames this. It says, you are the guinea pig in a multi-billion-dollar psychological experiment. Let that sink in. These companies aren't just slapping together bad ads. They are deploying high-frequency algorithms to test exactly how much of a lie your brain will tolerate before it just breaks. The algorithm has definitively proven that, at least right now, lying to you is simply the most profitable thing a mobile game company can possibly do. Now, you might be wondering, what's the actual science behind why we just cannot look away from these completely fake ads? Well, it all ties back to Gestalt psychology and this really wild thing called the Zeigarnik Effect. It's named after a Soviet psychologist, Bluma Zeigarnik, and basically it's a phenomenon where our brains obsess over incomplete or interrupted tasks way more than completed ones. It's the exact same reason a crazy cliffhanger at the end of a TV show drives you absolutely up the wall. And modern advertising has completely weaponized this psychology. I mean, think back to traditional board game ads from the 90s. They always showed kids cheering, high-fiving, and winning the game. But modern mobile ads, they do the exact opposite. They purposefully show a player failing miserably. The character gets crushed or burned or trapped. The ad intentionally avoids showing you a completed task, specifically to trigger that Zeigarnik effect right in your brain. When you see that epic failure, it creates what psychologists actually call a cognitive itch. You look at the painfully obvious solution that the fake player somehow missed, and you immediately think, come on, I could do that. The ad is literally engineered to make you feel smarter and more competent than the person playing. Your brain physically craves the satisfaction of stepping in, fixing the mistake, and completing the task. And guess what? The only way to scratch that itch is to hit that download button. But, the industry wasn't always built on this kind of psychological warfare. If we trace the timeline back, we started out with simple built-in games like Snake, remember that? Then the App Store launched the 99-cent era with massive global hits like Angry Birds. But then developers realized something huge. They could make way more money with microtransactions in games like Smurf's Village. Eventually, they took the logical next step and just made the game entirely free. But as the old saying goes, when the product is free, you are the product. The shift to free-to-play turned mobile gaming into an absolute financial juggernaut. By 2025, the mobile gaming industry hit a staggering $81.8 billion in revenue. To put that completely massive number into perspective, that perfectly matches the revenue of literally all other non-gaming apps combined. It's a colossal, algorithmically driven money printing machine. But with all this cash flowing and all these blatant lies plastered on our screens, it brings up a really obvious question. Seriously, isn't this illegal? I mean, consumer protection laws exist for a reason, right? If you go out and buy a car and the dealer hands you a bicycle, you'd sue them. And if you ever look at the comment sections under these mobile ads, they're just full of users screaming that the games are total scams. Well, interestingly enough, for a brief moment in time, regulators actually did try to step in and stop it. Back in 2020, the UK's Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA, brought the hammer down on a giant publisher called Playtrix, the folks behind Homescapes. They banned their deceptive ads because the puzzle gameplay shown literally did not exist in the actual Match 3 game. But instead of, actually changing their marketing to be honest, these companies found a brilliant, albeit super sinister, loophole. The ruling said the gameplay in the ad had to be in the game, but it didn't say exactly how much of it had to be in the game. So developers simply slapped those fake ad scenarios into the app as a tiny 2-minute minigame that you might only encounter once every 50 levels. Boom. The deception became entirely legally compliant. And let me tell you, the reward for finding that little loophole was astronomical. Playtrix, the very company hit by that ASA ruling, saw its yearly revenue absolutely skyrocket. Around 2016, they were making a respectable $400 million. But by 2023, after completely mastering this legally compliant clickbait model, their revenue hit over $2.8 billion. They essentially became the undisputed kings of the freemium sector, spawning just countless copycats in the process. So the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is the cold, hard math behind this strategy. It's a little thing known as user acquisition arbitrage. Advertisers track this metric called CPI, or cost per install. Basically, if you make a perfectly honest ad showing standard puzzle gameplay, it might cost you anywhere between $5 and $10 to acquire a new user. But if you use a deceptive, high-urgency clickbait ad, that cost plummets to just $2 to $5 per install. It's that simple. Lying is literally just cheaper. But here is where the story gets really, really weird. You would naturally think that tricking people into downloading a game would massively backfire, right? And honestly, you'd be right, because the actual gameplay doesn't match the ad at all. The churn rate, which is how fast people abandon the app, is absolutely brutal. Up to 75% of new players delete these deceptive apps within just 24 hours of downloading them. People realize it's a total lie almost immediately and just smash that uninstall button. Which naturally leads us to ask, if 3/4 of your audience walks out the door on the very first day, how does this business model even survive? I mean, in literally any other industry, an advertising campaign with a 75% failure rate would get you fired on the spot. But in the mobile game industry, that 75% mass exodus isn't a failure at all because, and this is key, they aren't looking for normal players. They are hunting for whales. This is the term they actually borrowed straight from the casino industry. Whales make up a tiny, tiny fraction of the user base, usually well under 1%. These are individuals with significant disposable income, highly addictive personalities, and a tendency to get deeply, deeply enmeshed in digital ecosystems. The developers do not care if 99 normal people leave out the front door in disgust, just as long as that one whale stays behind. The math behind this strategy is just stark. That 99% of normal players, they generate a practically invisible sliver of the profit. But that 1% of whales, they generate the vast majority of the revenue through endless $1 to $5 microtransactions. So the entire deceptive ad pipeline isn't a mistake. It's basically just a massive automated dragnet. They're sifting through millions and millions of people every single day just to find those few highly vulnerable individuals. To truly understand the sheer power of this, our source highlights a super striking, honestly sobering anecdote. A bank employee recently went viral sharing a story about a customer whose credit card was totally blocked for suspected fraud. Why? Because nearly $5,000 had been drained on the game Genshin Impact. The customer called the bank absolutely furious. It wasn't a scammer who stole his card. It was him. And the very second the bank unblocked his account, he immediately logged right back in and dropped another $200 on the game. Now, that is a game designer's ultimate dream, but it's an absolute nightmare for consumer advocates because the collateral damage here is very real. Children, who obviously lack self-regulation, easily fall into these one-click purchase traps on their parents' phones. Furthermore, the algorithms driving this are just ruthless. If a known whale tries to quit and step away from the game for a bit, the algorithm will specifically target their social media feeds with emotionally manipulative ads, stuff like characters crying or in serious peril. It's literally designed to drag recovering addicts right back into the loop. So, up to this point, generating this endless stream of deceptive, highly emotional clickbait actually required human animators and designers. But what happens when the humans are completely removed from the equation? As the explainer dives into next, we are currently entering a chilling new phase of this entire industry. We're rapidly moving from human-designed ads to AI-generated ads. Look, human animation is relatively slow and it's expensive. You have to pay people. But new AI video generators, things like Runway and Google Flow, are totally changing the game. They can create an endless, instantaneous, and incredibly cheap pipeline of visual content with just a few clicks. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, but AI video is super glitchy and full of weird errors. And hey, you're right. But as the source brilliantly points out, for a mobile game ad, animation errors literally do not matter. Think about it, they are already selling a complete lie. A character having a few extra fingers or a weird wobbly physics glitch just makes the video look weirder, which might actually grab your attention and increase the click-through rate. AI allows these companies to create a fully automated, zero-cost pipeline of psychological manipulation. And this zero-cost AI pipeline is rapidly building into a full-blown economic crisis for the rest of the gaming industry. Back during the Honest era, the cost to acquire a user was high. The clickbait era brought that down to a medium level. But the AI era? It pushes the cost of acquiring a new user to near zero. A marketing team now only needs one person typing prompts into an AI generator. When the profit margins become this incredibly skewed, it becomes mathematically impossible for an honest, hardworking indie game developer to even compete in the same advertising space. But there might actually be a breaking point on the horizon. Believe it or not, this entire multi-billion-dollar model is incredibly fragile. First off, the original whales are aging out. They are getting older, having kids, getting busy, and naturally leaving the ecosystem. But more importantly, there is a massive generational backlash brewing. Research is showing that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are actively, fiercely hostile toward AI-generated content. They view deceptive AI slop with utter contempt. So, if the marketing actively repulses the next generation of potential whales, this whole house of cards could easily collapse. Because trust is fundamentally broken right now, players are just becoming exhausted by the endless deception. But the analysis does end on a somewhat hopeful note, which is nice. There's a rapidly growing appetite for finding the diamond underneath all that slop. The App Store is actually still a place where passionate, independent developers release premium, honest, pay-once games. You just have to be willing to sift through a mountain of clickbait to find them. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to ponder. As the floodgates of AI-generated clickbait burst wide open, making this deception cheaper and way more pervasive than ever before, will this finally be the catalyst that breaks the spell? Will the sheer volume of fake ads push us to reject the algorithmic slop entirely and intentionally seek out honest, well-crafted games? Next time you're scrolling and you feel that cognitive itch to step in and solve a puzzle on your feed, just remember you are part of an $81 billion experiment. The only question is, are you going to let them win?